Hey everyone, I'm Jordy.
And I'm Ro.
And we are back with another episode of Insider Insight. So for those of you that may not know me, I'm our Director of Communication, and Ro.
I am the Director of Production.
So today we are going to talk a little bit about indoor versus outdoor events, and more specifically, things to keep in mind when planning an outdoor event, because there are a lot of things that you may not have considered if this is your first time planning an outdoor event. One thing to think about when planning an outdoor event is, of course, weather. What are we doing if it rains? What are we doing if it's 100 degrees? So making sure that there is a solid rain plan or inclement weather plan is extremely important. And that's important to know well before the event, so you can get that out to all of the volunteers, all of the attendees. So if you get to the event on Saturday and all of a sudden it starts raining, we know what we're gonna do. Something I'm gonna let Ro speak to a little bit is sound, outside versus indoor, and specific things to think about when you're planning out the placement of speakers and how sound travels a little bit differently outside versus inside.
So when doing an outdoor event, sound is very, very important when it comes to making sure that you're covering the entire area. So you want to take into account how big the space is, how many people will be there, if they're going to be tents, because all those little things kind of affect the sound and what type of speakers you should be using. It's a little bit different than indoor, because indoor you usually have the walls that kind of bounce the sound around and kind of helps you out, but outdoor it just goes everywhere. So you have to keep that in mind whenever you're thinking about the actual audio that you're gonna need.
Another thing to think about is power. A lot of times if you're doing an outdoor event, for example, we have an event that we are hosting in a parking lot in a couple of weeks, and there's no power out there. So we need to make sure that we're communicating with all of the vendors or the resource booths that have power requirements to make sure that we have generators there ready to power not only things like the photo booth or, computers and power strips, but also all of our equipment that's going to be outside as well.
And another thing to think of as well is how that power is routed. Because a lot of times when you have things outdoors, you'll have lots of people walking everywhere. So you have to make sure that you're using either cable ramps or some kind of rugs, or running it through the grass, or just anywhere that you can where there'll be a trip hazard or anything for your guests. You want to make sure that you're being very cognizant of where you're running all the power.
A couple other small things to consider for outdoor events are things like water or water stations. We just had an event a few weeks ago, and similar to the event we have coming up, making sure that there is enough water there for the attendees, because both of these events are in the middle of the summer and it can get really hot outside. And another thing, not as fun but equally as important, are outdoor restrooms, whether that's porta potties or having access to a nearby building, making sure that you have those on site for the attendees.
And another thing to think about is security. So you want to make sure that you're always employing some kind of security company. It always depends on the city or the county or the state. Wherever you're having the event, it may have different ordinances or different rules when it comes to security and how many you have to have, or if you have to have EMS on hand, some kind of emergency services. So you always have to think about those things as well. And sometimes we don't think about that until you get there. So definitely keep that on your checklist.
Yeah, and another thing that reminded me of are various permits, right? If you're in the city versus the county or wherever your event is, making sure that you have the permits to either dig holes in the ground for tents or noise ordinances, or permits for, using city-run power. Anything like that are really important to think about well before the event to make sure that you have those things taken care of.
Yeah, because a lot of times if you don't have the permits, you can't even do the event. So you would have put in all this time and effort, and then you can't get it permitted. And then you have to completely change what you're doing. So definitely work on getting permits whenever you pick out your location, or you have a location in mind that you want to use.
If your outdoor event has any sort of screens that you're using, you have any visuals that you want to show, the best screen to use outside is an LED wall. Projectors and TVs oftentimes get washed out by the sun, but LED walls are able to show those graphics whether it's nighttime or in the middle of the day.
And whenever you're securing your LED wall, make sure that it is outdoor rated. because the last thing you want is to secure, well, most companies won't even let you use an indoor screen outdoor, but just make sure you check because those actually require a little more power. So that would be another check mark for your power requirements.
Awesome. If you are planning an outdoor event and have any questions and want to make sure that you have all of your bases covered, you can set up a call with our team at the link below. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time on Insider Insight.